So one of the biggest issues that many people have, especially if they're looking to get into real estate, is just how expensive real estate has become. And we look at what happened in 2023 with rising interest rates getting to 25-year highs. We saw 8% interest rates in November. How is it possible that home values continue to rise? Well, the answer to that is it's just been simple supply and demand. There simply is not enough available homes for sale in the United States to satisfy all of the demand. So while affordability and interest rates were high and it impacted many buyers from being able to buy real estate, there was also a big portion of US consumers that were able to handle the higher interest rates that could afford it. So they were buying real estate, which because of that, we saw real estate rise, depending on the source, about 4 to 8% in 2023. So now that we're going into the second quarter, here is your market update for April 2024. I'm going to touch on some supply and some new news that has happened in the past month or so that will be exciting to you, especially if you're a buyer, and also what that impact will have for a seller, and that is with supply. We've seen some big changes. So I'm going to touch on a little bit of supply today. We'll go over what interest rates are doing, and overall just a basic look on where the real estate economy stands right now, what we expect to happen in the near future, and what's happening right now. As you know, I do these monthly, so I'm basing this more on a 30 to 45 day viewpoint, and every month I will update that depending on all the changes that are happening, which there are constantly changes happening. So let's start with interest rates, right? This has been the biggest topic. We've seen interest rates come down a little bit from about November to January, but from till about January until now, which is in early April, we haven't seen a big move to interest rates. We've been hovering kind of in that high 6 to low 7s for a 30-year fix. Why haven't they moved? So let me touch on the Federal Reserve. So this is stuff that you see in the news a lot. The Federal Reserve is what we are watching like a hawk right now to see what they're going to do next. Now, coming into this year, it was anticipated that the Fed was going to do a cut to the federal funds rate and potentially several this year. Now that we've gone into April, we just went through our March meeting. In January of this year, many had projected into these markets that in March was going to be the first rate cut that the Fed did. Well, they didn't cut. They kept rates flat. And basically the rhetoric of the Fed right now is they're watching two main components that have a big impact on mortgage rates. One is inflation. They're trying to get inflation down. I will say they haven't done everything great, but they've done a pretty good job at handling that. Inflation is dropping, but why aren't mortgage rates dropping? Well, the other factor that they're watching is our job market, and more importantly, unemployment. Our job market, as I've talked about in previous months, has been pretty resilient. How they're monitoring the job market and the sources that they're using has changed a little bit. So we're gonna watch and see what happens. We know that there's some pain coming. We know big corporate companies are doing layoffs. It's coming, it's just a little bit of a lagging indicator. As soon as the Fed starts to see a little bit of pain in our job market and unemployment rising, we should start to see that first federal rate cut. I'll send you another update before the June meeting, but June right now is the next projected big date of the anticipation of the Fed starting to cut the federal funds rate. Once they do that, we believe the floodgates will open a little bit. We believe that interest rates are going to drop. I don't know if it's going to be an initial spike. Of course, I'll comment on this when this happens. But at this moment in time, rates have been fairly flat. I don't expect a big change up or down between now and May or June until that meeting happens. So right now, expect, sort of a plateau in interest rates. Okay, let's talk about supply and the biggest change and how this is going to benefit many and how it may impact some in a negative way, believe it or not. So supply right now, the report just came out for March. Supply, or homes available for sale, or inventory, right? This is all the terminology we use, is up 25% now versus this time last year. Now that's a pretty big increase. Why now is inventory popping up a little bit? Well, I think there's several factors. One is people have felt so locked into their homes. So existing homeowners that have really low interest rates didn't want to give up that interest rate. And things just change in our lives, and there are moments where you just can't hold on to it anymore. You need to move, right? Relocation, divorce, empty nesters, you're running high on debt and you need to cash out your money to pay off your debt. There's several different scenarios. We're starting to see inventory pop up a little bit because sellers are now willing to give up that low rate to get into a house that they really want to be in. So this is a good thing, and this is what we've been waiting for. The low supply has been one of the biggest reasons why home values continue to increase even at the high interest rates. So let's talk a little bit about like some pros and some cons of supply being more. Now let's talk about from a buyer perspective. This is great for buyers. This is going to give you a buyer more options out there. If you're a buyer in this market and you've been watching what's happening, there's not a lot of stuff coming to market. So you're limited on your options. So more inventory means more options, potentially in a neighborhood that you've been hoping for. So keep an eye on this inventory, especially areas that you've been focusing on. You should start to see that pop up a little bit. Now, one could argue that inventory is also popping up based on the time of year. The peak buying and selling season is typically spring and summer. We're now in spring. So time will tell. We'll see what happens with inventory, and I'll update you from month to month. But it could be a combination of the two of those. A seasonality thing where inventory just usually does pop up right now. Conversely, sellers are willing to give up those rates and sell their house and get into a home that they really wanted to be in. Let's talk about some of the cons, and this would be from a selling perspective. So if you're a homeowner and you're thinking about selling, now that more inventory is popping up, you have more competition. Meaning when you were the only one in the neighborhood that is selling a house and you have all these buyers fighting for your house, it was driving the price up. You were most likely selling your home for more than what it was worth. Great scenario for a seller. I think this increase in inventory will have an impact on the sellers. Now this depends on the area that you're in, of course, and how much demand is there. But I think overall, more inventory means more competition from you as a seller, which means pricing your home is going to be that much more integral. You can't just put your house on at any price and buyers will just come because there's no other houses on the market. That's going to change a little bit. So again, more of a benefit to buyer, not so much to sellers. Now, we are seeing some price reductions as well because of this inventory. Now, I will tell you that I work several different markets, primarily Oregon and California, and some of these higher demand areas, even with the higher inventory, we're still seeing a lot of demand in those areas, so not a lot of price reductions. There are some different markets, like for example, some of my more kind of outside of the bigger city markets in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, those types of places. We're starting to see homes sitting on the market a little bit longer. Now with more inventory coming on, we're starting to see a little bit more motivation from a seller starting to do some price reductions, meaning dropping their price and trying to find a buyer that's interested. This is, I see, as an amazing opportunity for a buyer. You know, when a seller is motivated and you're seeing price reductions, obviously make sure you're working with a great real estate agent, you're going to do your due diligence on the house. But if you are looking for a deal in this market, my best suggestion is you find a motivated seller. You know, your search for a home could be anything that's been on the market maybe longer than 60 days. Anything longer than 60 days is a little bit abnormal in this market because things move so quickly. It's your opportunity to find a home where maybe the seller priced it way too high. It scared away all the buyers. They went on. And now that home is just sitting there, the seller is starting to reduce the price. They're motivated because they have to sell that house. It could be a great opportunity as a buyer in this market with more inventory and more motivated sellers, which has not been the norm in the past 18 to 24 months. So time will tell and see what happens with that. Obviously, as interest rates continue to come down, hopefully, you know, this summer is what we're hoping for. Remember, it's going to bring a lot more buyers back into the market. So while inventory is increasing a little bit, the more buyers that come back into the market, they're going to be soaking up that new inventory. So we're still historically low, but it is a positive sign that we're seeing inventory pop up. We'll see what happens in May and June. Again, these are kind of your peak buying and selling seasons. I hope that was helpful. If you guys like what you see, please comment. Do you agree with me? Do you not? Do you have questions on what I'm talking about? And also subscribe if you like these updates. I do them every single month, and I'll be bringing to you a lot more content as the months progress. We'll talk to you soon.